Keanu Reeves discreetly entered a luxurious watch store wearing a simple gray shirt, faded jeans, and a worn-out cap, trying to go unnoticed. The judgmental glances came quickly, but he remained calm. What he would do next would leave everyone in the store in shock, especially the employee who dared to underestimate him. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. In the heart of the city, the Aram store stood as a temple of luxury, its name derived from the Latin word for gold. It perfectly embodied its essence, offering the most exclusive, valuable, and unattainable items. This wasn't merely a commercial space, it was a symbol of status. Even the entrance, with pristine glass doors and golden accents, made anyone hesitate, as if only the chosen few were worthy of stepping inside. The interior didn't disappoint. Marble floors reflected meticulously lit showcases. Majestic watches rested on velvet cushions, each piece appearing more unattainable than the last. Elegantly dressed staff in tailored suits moved silently, ready to serve, but only those they deemed worthy of their time. It was into this environment that Keanu stepped, wearing a wrinkled gray shirt, faded jeans, and a worn-out cap. He seemed anything but deserving of the space, yet he hesitated not. Walking slowly with his hands in his pockets, his eyes calmly scanned the showcases. He stopped in front of a main display where a gleaming watch encased in diamonds caught his attention. Its price was discreet but clear enough to separate the curious from the true buyers. One of the staff noticed him, tall, slim, and clad in a suit that likely cost more than a car. He walked toward Keanu with calculated steps. His eyes swept over the customer from head to toe, and he suppressed a smirk. "Can I help you?" he said, his tone neutral, but a slightly arched brow betrayed his condescension. Keanu looked at him calmly and pointed at the most expensive watch in the display. "I'd like to know more about this watch," he said, his voice calm yet direct. The employee blinked, as if he hadn't understood. "This one?" he asked, leaning slightly to confirm Keanu was indeed pointing at the priciest model. "That watch costs well more than most people can imagine," the employee said. "I know. I want more details," Keanu replied, unbothered. The employee crossed his arms, allowing a faint mocking smile to surface. "Well, I'm not sure it's exactly the type of piece you would be looking for," he said, pausing deliberately. "Perhaps I can show you something more accessible." The disdain was unmistakable. Keanu didn't respond immediately, keeping his gaze fixed on the watch. The employee sighed, as if dealing with a stubborn child. "This model specifically is a limited edition, very exclusive, an investment really. The kind of thing that appeals to a select clientele," he said, flashing a forced smile. "But of course, there are other options, something more fitting." Keanu finally looked at the employee. "I just want to know about the watch." "Can you explain it to me?" he said, his tone as serene as ever. The employee chuckled lightly, shaking his head, not bothering to hide his sarcasm. "Sure, sir. It's made of 18-karat white gold with diamond inlays, fully automatic, designed by one of Switzerland's finest watchmakers. Only 5 in the world. A true classic, and priced about the same as a small apartment. Would you like to know more?" Keanu remained calm, unaffected by the sarcasm. The employee, on the other hand, seemed irritated by his persistence. "Well, as I said, perhaps it's better to look at something more in line with your profile." Keanu didn't respond immediately. He turned back to the watch, seemingly ignoring the employee's hostile tone entirely. However, there was something in his posture, a calmness so absolute it felt out of place. He was no ordinary customer, but this went unnoticed by the employee, who appeared to enjoy the situation. Meanwhile, other customers began to notice what was happening. A couple nearby exchanged discreet glances, while an older woman sighed, uncomfortable with the scene. Yet no one intervened. Breaking the silence, Keanu spoke again. "I'm not interested in other options. I want more details about this watch." His persistence made the employee lose patience. He chuckled this time, not bothering to conceal his disdain. Look, let me be honest with you. This watch isn't for everyone. It's for people who can afford it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Keanu stared at him for a few seconds. His expression remained unchanged, but there was something in his eyes that made the employee briefly uncomfortable. Keanu took a step back, adjusted his cap, and let out a deep breath. His voice, when he spoke again, was as calm as before but now carried a firmness no one expected. I want to know more about this model. The simplicity of the statement, spoken with such conviction, made the employee hesitate. He blinked, surprised as if suddenly realizing something was out of the ordinary. Silence lingered for a moment. Little did the employee know, from that moment on, everything was about to change. The employee crossed his arms, adopting a defensive stance with a sarcastic smile plastered across his face. This watch, he asked, pointing dismissively at the piece in the display case, well, let's be honest, it costs more than most people earn in years. Are you sure you want to keep insisting? Keanu remained calm, his gaze fixed on the watch. I'd like to know more about it. That's all. The simplicity of his response irritated the employee, who sighed dramatically, as if summoning all his patience to continue. All right, sir, let me save you some time, and mine. This is an exclusive model, limited edition, white gold, diamonds, and a Swiss automatic mechanism that's a benchmark in the market. He looked at Keanu with disdain. Anything else you'd like to know? Keanu didn't flinch. Could you show me how it works? The employee laughed in disbelief. Show you how it works? Really? He raised an eyebrow. This isn't the kind of watch you just try on. It's a collector's piece, you know, meant for someone who understands what they're holding. I just want to see how it works. Didn't you say it's automatic? Keanu asked, his tone firm but still polite. The employee narrowed his eyes, now visibly annoyed. Look, sir, no offense, but this kind of watch isn't for just anyone. Do you even realize how much it costs, or are you just curious? Keanu lifted his gaze, locking eyes with the employee for a few seconds. I don't think the price is relevant right now. I'm asking to see the watch. The employee let out a short laugh and shook his head. Sure, price isn't relevant, he said, pausing to let the sarcasm sink in. Well, just in case, let me inform you, it's $300,000. Got that? $300,000, he emphasized each word as if explaining it to a child. Keanu kept his gaze steady, unbothered. All right, now can you show me the watch, or are you going to keep explaining things I didn't ask? The employee took a step back, crossing his arms with a mocking smile. You know what I think? I think you're in the wrong place, because AUM isn't a store for the curious, he gestured toward Keanu's clothing. People who just want to look and dream. Here, we deal with serious buyers. Keanu narrowed his eyes slightly. And what makes you think I'm not a serious buyer? Well, with all due respect, the employee smiled, let's just say you don't have the typical profile. The tension grew, but Keanu remained composed. And what is the typical profile? He asked, crossing his arms. The employee shrugged, feigning indifference. Oh, you know. Someone who fits the environment. Someone who looks like they belong. Someone who doesn't waste others' time. Keanu took a deep breath. Interesting, so by your logic, appearance is what defines a serious customer? Keanu asked. It's not just appearance, sir, the employee said, smiling and fully embracing his contempt. Let's be honest, you don't look like you're here to buy anything. That's a fact, not an opinion. Keanu stayed silent for a moment, observing the employee. It seems you measure value by what you see on the surface. That's sad. The remark briefly wiped the smile from the employee's face, but he quickly regained his composure. What's sad is wasting time with someone who has no intention of buying. Now that's a problem. Keanu took another deep breath and stepped back. Got it. It seems I'm not welcome here. Thank you for your service. It was my pleasure, The employee replied with a clearly satisfied grin. Come back anytime. Maybe next time, something might fit your budget. Keanu turned to leave, walking calmly toward the door. The sound of his footsteps was the only noise audible in the store. The employee crossed his arms, a satisfied smirk on his face, thinking he had won. But then a low, surprised voice broke the silence. Wait, said a customer near the counter, frowning. Is that it? Can't be, it's him. That's Keanu Reeves. The name was spoken with such incredulity that it immediately grabbed everyone's attention. The employee froze, blinking as if he hadn't heard correctly. Keanu Reeves, he murmured in shock. The customer approached the employee, pointing at Keanu, who was now near the exit. Yes, it's him, the actor. Didn't you recognize him? He's world famous, the customer said, almost indignant. How could you not know who he is? The employee's stomach churned. He glanced at the manager, who had also approached, his face clearly concerned. Is this serious? The employee asked, now looking pale. He's really Keanu Reeves, the manager simply nodded, disappointed. Of course he is, and you treated him like that, the manager shot the employee a stern look. He's known as one of the kindest and most humble men in the world. You just made a monumental mistake. The employee didn't wait another second. He dashed toward the door, his heart racing. Keanu was about to open the store's door when he heard hurried footsteps behind him. The employee caught up to him, nearly tripping over his own desperation. Mr. Reeves, wait, please, he said, his voice trembling. Keanu stopped and turned slowly, facing the employee with a serene expression loaded with meaning. Now you're calling me sir? Keanu asked, his voice calm yet firm. The employee was speechless for a moment, catching his breath. Finally, he managed to stammer, I'm so sorry. I had no idea who you were. I deeply apologize for my behavior. It was unacceptable. Keanu raised an eyebrow. You need to know who I am to treat people with respect? Is that how it works? The employee turned red, unable to respond. No, of course not, sir. It's just that I was wrong. I'm truly sorry. Keanu gave a faint smile, but it was more a smile of disappointment. This isn't about me. It's about you. Your attitude says more about who you are than any watch you could ever sell. The employee lowered his head, ashamed, as the manager approached, looking equally uncomfortable. The manager tried to intervene, his voice filled with nervousness. Mr. Reeves, I deeply apologize for what happened. I assure you, this doesn't reflect our store standards. Please allow us to make it up to you in some way. Anything you desire, we're at your service. Keanu glanced at the manager and then at the employee. He took a step back and adjusted his cap, maintaining the same calm demeanor. I don't need anything from you. I just wanted to see the watch, and you decided I wasn't worthy of that. He turned his gaze directly to the employee. Maybe this is a lesson for you. Learn to treat people as they deserve, not as you think they should be. Keanu turned toward the door again, but before leaving, he paused one last time. The problem isn't me. It's who you've chosen to become. Good luck with that. And with that, Keanu left, leaving the store in complete silence. The employee stood frozen at the store's entrance, staring at the door as if expecting Keanu to come back, but he knew there was nothing else he could do. The manager let out a deep sigh. I hope it was worth it, he said, casting one last severe look at the employee. Because you just put our reputation on the line. The employee swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his actions like never before. The atmosphere inside Aram felt frozen after Keanu Reeves had left. The employee remained near the door, his face pale, his eyes glued to the floor. Every word Keanu had spoken echoed in his mind like a relentless bell, reminding him of the colossal mistake he'd just made. The manager sighed deeply, breaking the silence. Running a hand over his face, he turned to the employee with a mixture of disappointment and restrained anger. Do you have any idea what you've just done? He asked, his voice low but heavy. Keanu Reeves, one of the most respected and admired men in the world, walked in here, and you treated him like he was nobody. You embarrassed our store, our brand, and yourself. The employee shook his head, panicking. I didn't know it was him. He looked so simple. He didn't seem. The manager raised his hand, cutting the sentence short. That's no excuse. It doesn't matter who he was. It doesn't matter how he was dressed. You're supposed to treat every customer with the same respect. That's why you're here. The manager's voice rose, drawing glances from other employees who remained still, pretending to be busy. What do you think happens now? The manager continued. Do you think he's just going to forget this? He's not just any customer. He's an influential figure. And do you know what he'll say? That he was humiliated in our store. The employee tried to intervene, his voice faltering. I can try to fix this. Maybe if I do, chase after him again. You already did that, and it clearly didn't work. The manager shook his head. If I were you, I'd start preparing to deal with the consequences. As the manager walked away, the employee stood frozen, feeling exposed and small. His mind replayed every detail of the interaction with Keanu. The words he had said, the tone he had used, it all seemed so obvious now, so wrong. I judged him by his appearance, he thought, his stomach churning. I didn't stop to listen. I didn't think he could be more than he seemed. He recalled Keanu's calm demeanor, the serenity with which he had responded to every rude comment, and felt a lump in his throat. Why hadn't he realized it sooner? Why had he let his own biases speak louder? The employee glanced at his colleagues, but none dared to approach him. He knew he was on his own. The store, which once carried an air of controlled professionalism, now felt heavy. The other employees continued attending to their customers, but there was something different in the atmosphere. It was as if the shadow of what had happened hung over everyone, a silent reminder of the consequences of failing to respect others. One of the employee's colleagues, standing nearby, shot him a warning glance. No words were needed. The message was clear: you crossed the line. At the end of the shift, the manager called the employee into his office. The small, cold space felt more oppressive than ever. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, the manager began bluntly. You made a mistake that could cost this store dearly. This isn't just about Keanu Reeves. It's about what he represents. The message you sent today is that we only respect people who look wealthy. That goes against everything we're trying to build here. The employee opened his mouth to respond, but the manager raised his hand again. I'm not interested in your excuses right now. I'm interested in knowing how you're going to learn from this. Because if this happens again, there won't be another conversation. We'll be done. The employee nodded, unable to meet the manager's gaze. I'll reflect on it. I promise. The manager sighed. Reflect quickly, because believe me, this story isn't over yet. As the employee left the office, he passed through the store's glass doors and glanced at the reflection of the luxurious environment around him. Keanu's words echoed once more in his mind: respect shouldn't depend on a name or appearance. He looked up at the sky, now darkening, and wondered how long it would take to undo the damage he had caused, if that was even possible. In a modest neighborhood far from the glittering displays of Aram, Keanu walked into a small watch shop called Time and Value. The space was simple yet inviting, with shelves lined with a variety of watches, some vintage and others with modern designs, though none had the ostentatious luxury of the previous store. An elderly salesperson with gray hair and round glasses greeted him warmly. Good afternoon. How can I help you today? He asked, his tone genuinely friendly. Keanu returned the smile immediately, feeling the difference in the atmosphere. I'm looking for something special. Something meaningful. The salesperson nodded, gesturing for Keanu to approach the counter. Then you've come to the right place. The most expensive watch isn't always the one with the best story. We have a few unique pieces here. May I suggest one? Keanu replied with a smile. The salesperson pulled out a small pocket watch with a classic, elegant design. It was simple compared to the pieces at Aram, yet it exuded charm. He opened the cover, revealing a discreet engraving in Latin, Tempus fugit, amor main, time flies, but love remains. This one is special, the salesperson explained. It was made to remind us that what matters in life are the moments, not the possessions. Keanu held the watch, examining it closely. This is exactly what I was looking for, he said with a smile. Back at Aram, the manager called the entire staff for a meeting at the end of the day. He held a note in his hand, left by Keanu before leaving the store. The manager began reading, his voice firm yet filled with meaning. Respect is the true luxury. It doesn't matter what you sell, but how you choose to treat people. Maybe it's time to rethink what you value. The silence in the room was deafening. Every word seemed to strike the employee who had treated Keanu with such contempt. He avoided meeting the eyes of his colleagues, ashamed. The manager sighed and continued. This store doesn't thrive on luxury alone. It thrives on reputation. And today, that reputation was tarnished, not by a product or service, but by a lack of respect. I hope all of you understand this, because I will not tolerate anything like this happening again. He paused, turning his gaze directly to the employee. From now on, I expect you to rethink everything about what it means to serve a customer. If you can't learn from this, there's no place for you here. Do I make myself clear? The employee nodded slowly, feeling the weight of every word. Yes, sir. Understood. A few days later, the story had spread. Blogs and social media buzzed with commentary about Keanu Reeves' interaction at the luxury store and the humility with which he handled the situation. It only enhanced his reputation as one of the most humble and admired celebrities in the world. Meanwhile, at Time and Value, the elderly salesperson noticed the pocket watch he had sold to Keanu featured in a special news segment. He smiled as he recognized the piece. But it was what Keanu said in the report that truly moved him. This watch reminded me that the value of things isn't in their price, but in their meaning. Every time I look at it, I think about how important it is to treat people with respect, no matter where they come from or how they appear. That's the kind of wealth no one can take away from you. Months later, the employee who had mistreated Keanu was on a different path. He had left Aram and found a new job at a smaller store, far from the high-pressure environment of his previous role. Now, he made it a point to treat every customer with the respect he had failed to show Keanu that day. One day, a customer walked in, dressed in simple clothes, and the employee greeted him with a genuine smile, remembering the lesson he had learned. Welcome. How can I help you today? He didn't know who the customer was, but that didn't matter anymore. He had finally understood that true luxury lies in how you choose to treat others. The message inspired thousands, but its impact was even more profound on the small luxury store that had rejected Keanu. If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.